Hi everyone, this is Stephen, one of the co-founders of Taraxa, and welcome to our AMA. For those who have joined us on the live AMA, I apologize, I forgot to press record. So this is a re-recording of that AMA, which took place last week. Okay, so today we're going to give you, as usual, a quick update for the project, as well as answer one of the most frequently seen questions that we're seeing in the community. For the update, for the testnet, we're making quite a bit of progress on the testnet. It's not, it's not visible, I suppose, to people who aren't paying close attention to the code. But what we're seeing right now is that we're moving away from problems that have to do with consensus and moving into problems that have to do with performance as driven by scale, right? So as the network increases in size, in the number of nodes, as well as the amount of data that it handles, we're starting to see a lot of performance bottlenecks. And this is a very, very good development because unlike earlier in the year, at the beginning of the year, where we're seeing lots of crashes that are actually caused by problems in the underlying algorithm, bugs in the algorithm. Today, we almost see none of that, right? And we're starting to see a lot more of these sort of performance bottlenecks that slow down the network and make it seem like it's non-functional. So the reason why this is very good is because we are that means that we have a basically functional product. We just need to find all the ways that we can optimize it and make it run faster and more performant. So this is a very, very, very good development. It's obviously continuous. We'll keep you updated. One example of this type of performance bottlenecks we've seen is that in the last few weeks, we are observing that nodes actually tend to synchronize very, very, very slowly. For those community members, and thank you very much for doing this, who are participating in our pre-rollout testing, you'll notice that your node probably has a very hard time syncing, and it has a very hard time catching up to the rest of the network. And we're aware of that problem. It has to do with us having to building some ready-made database relationships so that they're not being rebuilt every time the DB is being queried. So that's one example of something that could drastically increase the speed of synchronization, and it's a very good example of a performance bottleneck, the type of problem that dominates the types of problems that we're seeing today in the test network. So this is a very, very good development, and we'll keep you updated. The next thing is staking. So we have finished designing the new community site in which staking and the claim of staking rewards is going to be a very central component of. We finished designing the website. We have completed the smart contract, and it has been audited. So that's all done. And we're right now wrapping up coding and actually doing extensive testing internally before we roll that out. So staking is something that we really wanted to get out as soon as possible. It's something that I think a lot of community members have asked for quite frequently as well. So it's coming very, very soon. It's an internal priority for us. Okay. So with the remaining of the time of the AMA, I'm going to address a question, right? This question I think came up quite a bit in a lot of our communities, and this is we keep talking about this idea of having a large collection of historical informal transactions can be a basis upon which we build out quantifiable reputation, right? So I think people have been asking, what does that mean, right? How do you get from informal transactions to quantifiable reputation? And what is quantifiable reputation used for, right? So let me give you two examples here. One is for off-chain businesses, and another one is probably more on-chain and more native to the crypto ecosystem. So for off-chain, what you see is that these informal transactions, right? So as we gave examples, they're coordinating agreements, right? So one company coordinating with another company on the project on very simple things day to day. I'm changing the size of this window. One contractor talking to another one, are you okay with this? And these are the types of informal transactions that we are capturing. And that type of informal transaction, if you accumulate that over time, say if you accumulate a year of that over time, what it is essentially is that it's a representation of working relationships. So it shows you as a company or as an individual, right? Who are you working with? And by virtue of that, if you're working with people for an extended period of time, that person or that company probably likes working with your company, right? So, or else they wouldn't be working with you for a very, very long time. So it establishes working relationships, your working relationships with others, right, in this industry or outside the industry. So working relationships is fundamentally, that's really the foundation of reputation, right? So if you think about someone going to a bank and trying to get a loan, the bank said, I've never heard of your company before, right? And typically what you would say is, well, yes, you never heard of me before, but I bet you've heard of my business partners, their companies X, Y, and Z, right? And by extension, right? So the bank will say, oh, well, if you're working with them, then I now know you a bit more, right? So now I trust you a bit more. Instead of you being a complete unknown, I now think that, hey, you are somewhat creditworthy because you're able to have a long-term working relationship with these other entities, these other companies that I already trust as a bank, right? So that's what it is, right? That working relationships is really the foundation of reputation. Okay. And why are reputations important? Well, I mean, reputations are important because financial instruments are typically based on a combination of collateral and reputation, right? If you want to take out a loan at a bank, they ask you for collateral, like do you have a house, you have a car, do you have a paycheck coming every 2 weeks, things like that. These are collaterals. Um, but they also very much care about your credit score, for example. And the credit score is one form of reputation. Working relationships is another form of reputation. And these factor very prominently into decisions around how financial instruments are actually designed and how they're actually executed, right? Having a good reputation versus a bad reputation can make a huge difference in the amount of capital and the terms that you have access to, right? So that's how you get from informal transaction into working relationships, which is a form of quantifiable reputation, right? And that directly impacts the amount of capital, the type of capital or type of financial instruments, and the terms, for them that you have access to. So that's an example of something that happens off chain, right? We actually have a few partners based in Asia that are actually piloting some of this stuff. They're trying to actually build a network of accounting firms as well as auditing firms to actually adopt this type of anchored working relationships, right? Anchored informal transactions to make auditing much more, to make auditing much easier, right? And to make the decision-making process for these financial institutions much faster, to really streamline the entire process. Okay. So for on-chain, right? So for on-chain, it's actually interesting that we're going to start backwards, right? So one of the things that we've always noticed, and I'm sure this is not a secret, everyone knows this, is that the vast majority of assets that we see on crypto, in the crypto space today, they don't really have an underlying signal that underpins the value of these assets, right? So there are no quantifiable signals. There are probably some vague ideas of, how much faith you have. Do you believe that this is going to become a huge ecosystem in the future? But there are no quantifiable signals, right? So what are quantifiable signals? I mean, like for example, and this is just an example. I'm not saying that, crypto assets are like, stocks, but if you look at stocks, that's a type of asset with very clear quantifiable signals underpinning its value, right? So assets, liabilities, it has revenue streams, it has the list of customers, it has lots of stuff that are all quantifiable and shows up in their reports that everyone can see. So these type of quantifiable signals figure very, very prominently into determining the value of these type of assets, right? Like stocks, especially amongst large institutional investors. So we don't really have that here in crypto, right? So in crypto, it's basically like I said, it's much more of a conceptual value, right? Much more of a conceptual value. So, is there a way to actually create these quantifiable signals, right? So one of the type of assets that we're seeing today that are, I would say, emergent, right? They're not really huge yet, but they're sort of emergent. It's the idea of social tokens, right? So if you have something like a social token, it's really sort of a vague association of an asset with an influencer or with a KOL that is associated to, right? There isn't really a lot of quantifiable connection between the two, right? What if you're actually able to quantify an influencer's influence, right? And actually be able to not only quantify their influence, but be able to specifically measure what type of influence they have, and what the scope of that influence is. Who are they influencing, and what subject matter they're influencing, right? And this is all kind of things that actually happen, sort of on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, right? They're posting things, they're having discussions online within communities, all in all sorts of media, right? And these type and influence happens, basically accumulates over time, right? And it would be really interesting if we are able to actually quantify that influence, right? Like, how are they influencing people? How many people they're influencing? Are they incurring a statistically significant change in conversation amongst the people that they're addressing? All kinds of very interesting quantifiable signals that we think could act as a very interesting underlying, an underlying signal for these type of social tokens, right? And why do we want that, right? I mean, I think we want that because it makes a lot of these crypto assets a lot more real, right? And it also goes to stabilize the market, rationalizes the market. There's always going to be a very large a speculative component to any asset, but at least now we have something that's actually is able to act as an anchor, even if it's a partial anchor, to the asset, and be able to give people a much better way to make decisions on sort of the value of any kind of these social tokens or any kind of crypto assets, right? So yeah, so I mean that's an example of something that's a lot more crypto specific, and we are actually building a prototype to actually prove that out. So please stay tuned, and we'll have a lot more news coming once we have something interesting to show everyone. Okay, thank you. Bye.